With the newest Bug Fables update, we were given a variety of new metals to play around with. This video is to serve as a continuation of my tier list where I rank every metal in the game from a few years ago. Let's not waste any time and get into what we got. Last Wind is a metal that needs no introduction. Near instantly, it was found that this metal is the undisputed best metal we got out of the patch and is an easy S tier pick. It's available as early as most of the new metals being in Chapter 2 at a meager price, and has arguably the most powerful effect of any metal in the game. When starting your turn with low HP, being 4 or less, the bug with this metal equipped will be given 2 actions as opposed to the standard 1. This is an effect that's ripe for abuse, with what it enables and what metals interact with it. I won't get into them all in this video, but when you consider how this game also has metals like Last Attack and Last Stand, which reduce the drawback of exhaustion and give you insane survivability given how low damage numbers in this game typically are, it's extremely easy to keep a bug with this metal alive. And Last Wind has a cheaper MP cost than both of them. Even before you get to that point, you can in a sense benefit from having 2 attackers attack while in the front, while keeping the bug with this metal on out of the front, increasing their survivability further. Back support being available so early also naturally means that you're going to be able to protect the bug with it on more easily. And did I mention that even if the bug falls in battle, Kabu's pep talk will revive them with 4 HP exactly, and they'll still have 2 actions still? Even if you were to knock yourself out with a move like V's Heavy Throw or an Abomination, meaning it's still your turn? It's honestly incredible how a metal like this was even allowed to exist, and it has incredible synergy with a variety of metals from low HP to do nothing to poison. However, it should be mentioned that plans to nerf it have already been confirmed once another patch rolls around. So in the words of Gino, enjoy it while you can. It's a bit of a shame if you ask me, as this just brings me back to how fun badges like Mega Rush can be to abuse in the Paper Mario games. The other metals aren't nearly as good in my opinion, but are still decent in their own right. To illustrate, every other metal I would say is C tier or worse. That being said, Pip Finder is pretty good. I'd probably rank this in the C tier because, though it's not an overpowered menace of a metal, it's genuinely convenient. Being able to allow HP and TP drops after regular enemy fights is a breath of fresh air when you otherwise don't have a means of gaining for those stats until Triumph Buzz and Victory Buzz, which neither are available until mid-game. And in the case of Triumph Buzz, it's no help for a bug that has fallen in battle as they don't gain HP from it. Meanwhile, you can heal a bug that's revived after an enemy fight and potentially save on items. The effects of Pip Finder, however, aren't consistent like Victory and Triumph Buzz are, and there are rare times where you'll get little to no drops from winning a fight. It also predictably has no business being equipped for event battles, as drops can't happen there at all. And you're not going to want it for the Cave of Trials or the BOSS rushes. However, if you don't care about that, this metal can definitely afford to be higher on this list. I just don't consider it as essential. There is nothing about it that I'd really change. I think it's good. I respect Ambusher as a worthwhile and convenient metal for extra damage, but I can only see myself ranking it in the C tier. For each copy equipped, you do 1 extra point of damage when you enter battle with a stunned overworld enemy. There are very few situations where you wouldn't want this. It instantly grounds flying enemies that can be knocked down, which helps Kabu a lot, pierces defense with the exception of Golden Ceilings, where you need the second copy for it to do anything, and in most situations, it's free damage. However, unlike Pip Finder, it does have some drawbacks. If you encounter enemies that will change their stance when being hit by a non-Kabu attack, they will start the battle with their guard up. Admittedly, Kabu should be your main attacker here anyway, plus I can't really think of a time where he would be attacking the majority of the time against them regardless, but it's food for thought. It's a similar story when fighting Venus Buzz but with V. However, there are other enemies where this metal can do you more harm than good, like if you were to go into battle with midgets or leaf bugs. First striking them there can easily see you take extra damage just going into battle, and what this metal will get you is pretty negligible. It also, like Pip Finder, has no business being equipped for event battles where first strikes are impossible. Inversely, enemies that start the battle underground like arrow worms are uprooted instantly, making this metal pretty good for Chapter 3. It really comes down to a case-by-case basis in my opinion. Now for something that's probably more controversial, Item Recycler. It's D tier. The bug with this metal equipped will occasionally see their used items still be in the party's inventory. Yeah, I know, getting occasional freebie items upon use is a very fun mechanic to play around with. And you can definitely do a lot with it, but the fact of the matter is that its effect is just not reliable. You're never going to be banking on this metal's effect unless you underprepared your items for a boss fight, or you're aiming to do the most damage possible in a single turn. And the latter is not at all practical, while the former is just bad planning. In that sense, this metal is more of a crutch than anything of real value. It can definitely bail you out if you get lucky, but if you have to rely on luck when this game has no shortage of downright lethal strategies you can use that are also just guaranteed to work, you're doing something seriously wrong. Now, this may be a surprise, but I think Bait Hook deserves some attention as my second D tier metal. The bulk of this metal equipped will be targeted more often by enemy attacks. Off that description alone, it's basically the inverse of Leaf Cloak. As for how effective it is, I don't have those hard numbers. I remember hearing that the game will check if the bug equipping this is targeted, and if it isn't, the game will recalculate another target and use that one instead. Regardless, this metal is more RNG. However, it seems to do a better job at protecting the bugs in the back, as the front bug is even more likely to get hit now, which in all honesty might make it better than Leaf Cloak, as it's even easier to focus on support if so. However, it's unfortunately offset by boss RNG, as most bosses can strike your whole party. There are times, however, where I can definitely see it being helpful, such as when fighting Zasp, or bosses where their AoE moves only are usable once their HP drops low enough, like False Monarch, Ceiling King, and Stratos. And there's definitely a good number of bosses where AoE moves just don't exist on them, like Peacock Spider, Delilah, and Kina. So it can pair well with danger and keep your other bugs out of danger better than Leaf Cloak can for only one bug. Not to mention, this metal no doubt makes it easier to actually fall into low HP if you're aiming for that. Nonetheless, it's still RNG, and it's unfortunately available fairly late into the game. By comparison, there's Bomb Master, which has a reliable effect where it increases the damage done by bomb items by +2. But as its drawback, the metal is available as late as Chapter 6 once you reach Termite Capital, so for most of the game, you can't really depend on it. For that reason, I feel it's fair to classify it as E tier. Bombs are strong, and making them do more damage can be great in general, but you get it so late that it may as well not even matter. This is the same game where after completing the Coliseum, you have the tools to become literally impossible to kill. And even if you don't want to do that, you're going to be doing more damage to bosses with your team skills like Fly Drop, which also pierces defense like bombs do. I just don't see many situations at all where this metal is really worth it. As for Royal Calling, it like Bomb Master is available late in the game. Actually, that's a lie. It's available only after you beat the game. It allows you to use Royal Decree anywhere, which is admittedly pretty cool, being able to buff your party's attack and defense in one move, and you don't even need Leaf to use it, unlike his Empower Plus and Fortify Plus medals is genuinely neat. However, being neat doesn't really count for much when this medal is post-game exclusive. By those standards, it's honestly unimpressive. E tier. The last few medals mentioned are lackluster, but I can see them being usable in general. But the last three to talk about, I do not see any practical use for these medals at all, and they're all F tier. Of the three, the best of the worst is probably Bad Dreams. Admittedly, this medal's effect is consistent and it gives you a means of weaponizing sleep as a status ailment. Instead of healing, a sleeping target loses their HP every turn. I really love the concept of more status medals in a game that's so heavy in poison, but this one's effect is just not worth it. Being able to make your enemies suffer from sleep is a good idea, but the damage they take from it is not nearly high enough to justify this medal as an option. And that's assuming who you're fighting can even be put to sleep to begin with. Every chapter boss, with the exception of Venus Guardian, is invulnerable to sleep, and the Guardian being vulnerable is offset by the fact that Venus herself will cure sleep if the turn ends with the status active on her Guardian. This fares better against mini-bosses, and even most bounty bosses, but you never want to let the full duration of sleep pass anyway. See, in Bug Fables, if you attack a sleeping target and wake them up early, they will lose their next turn. Meaning after one turn of this medal working, you can just go ham on them and rest assured it won't attack you until the following turn. This makes it highly impractical to use this medal as a means of damaging the opponent. I could see this medal still doing something if Champa uses the Drowsy Ribbon, as you'd want to cast the status as late into the turn as possible, so you don't feel the need to attack a sleeping target and wake them up, but it's still RNG if the status even lands, and aside from Team Slacker, I can't think of another boss where you'd want to do this, aside from like with V's Sleeping Needles. And not to yap, but if you land the needle and that individual hit doesn't cast a sleep status, it'll wake the target up even if you put it to sleep during that very same attack. So you'd optimally have to choose to not use the rest of the hits if the first one activates sleep, effectively defeating the purpose of reversing the healing effect that this medal primarily does. So yeah, have fun working around that. At least equipping it doesn't reverse healing for your own team. That's nice. Below that, it's honestly a toss-up, but I'll go with Helper Boost. Somehow this medal has worse availability than Bomb Master and gives less extra power. It boosts the power of allies by 1, whether they come from Leolia or the offspring of Mother Chomper. It's almost no extra benefit to the player at all because most helpers have only 1 hit when they attack, so the damage scaling is awful. And since it's only first made available in the Tourniquet, a lot of helpers that would benefit from it just aren't able to say nothing of the fact that depending on what you're fighting, it's RNG if this medal will even do anything. Madeline becomes almost as strong as Maki when this is equipped, but that doesn't mean she's any better than Levy when your target is airborne. So it's super unreliable for endurance challenges like the Cave of Trials. Extra damage for Chompy is nice, sure, but extra chip damage is not nearly enough of a selling point for the MP cost. Like, Poison Touch and Status Mirror have been in the game since the start, and even those medals are largely overlooked in favor of just smashing enemies and bosses to bits and pieces. This medal really should have been made available in Chapter 4, so that it could give helpers not named Levy, Madeline, or Team Generic a chance to actually be helpful. At least that way, it helps with the scaling issue from their damage not scaling with hardest. Otherwise, this medal is simply not worth it, not unless you really want your Chompy to hit that tiny bit harder. In which case, honestly based. Now speaking of the RNG scaling, we need to talk about Leolia. When you help certain bugs or their quests, this medal may summon them as a hologram to help you in battle. From the testing I've done, you can be assisted by Levy, Celia, Jen and Eri, Zasp, Mun, and Aunt Guard, Madeline, or Maki at any given moment. Ironically, I think Mun being in that pool makes Leaf Cloak worse, as you now can't get it without him being included. Now of these 8, I could make a tier list out of them alone, but collectively, they're not very good. You have no control over which of the 8 that join you in battle, and the fact they act independently of your command, unlike Chompy, means they're liable to be a nuisance. You, for example, can't rely as much on tactics like Leaf's Fidget Coffin, as the ally you summon can free the target and allow them to attack. They're also just in general not very strong. Mun is already useless, but even others like Zasp, Celia, the Ant Guard, and Jen and Eri, despite their ability to target airborne foes, are hindered by defense. And again, unlike Chompy, their attack power doesn't scale up alongside hardest mode to compensate for when defense is increased, making them even worse there. This affects Jen and Eri less admittedly, as their attacks carry status summons with them, but it's nonetheless impractical to rely on this medal to that end. And the other helpers that do pierce defense, Levy and Madeline, are limited to grounded enemies. So if you're fighting anything airborne or behind the weaker target, they're limited as to who they can even hit. Which would be advantageous if not for the fact that it's another RNG medal. RNG where the effect of what this medal provides is almost never actually worth it. Especially not with this medal's ridiculous 5 MP cost. I think that's it. I want to thank my channel members, Nintendo 60 Jorks, and Andy Switchy. As far as where I'd rank Holo Cloak, to be honest, I don't really care. It's a cosmetic medal. Just stick it wherever. No, not there.